Before I go into any of this, my big disclaimer is nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all approach. What I am doing is very specific to my body, and it's a constant trial and error. We are constantly learning. We're constantly realizing, oh, maybe that was enough fuel, or maybe that wasn't enough fuel, how I should be fueling throughout the day. But I just want to share with you guys my experience. So this is all in relation to myself. I think the biggest thing that I have learned training, this is now my 7th or 8th year, and whatever training you're doing, is that you need enough calories. And I think that I never realized how many calories you actually need, and I was suffering from things like insomnia. So I was waking up multiple times a night. I was getting really poor, crappy sleep. So I'd wake up and I was never rested, or I wouldn't feel rested, even though I'd say I was in bed for 8+ hours. I was very irritable. You could just ask Patrick. It would be like the constant moodiness of not knowing like why I was so upset. I was even feeling anxious at times, and then I would notice my body breaking down, or I just wasn't able to get through my sessions. So I wasn't necessarily hungry, and I didn't attribute those signs or those symptoms to actually needing more food. But then I started working with M2 Performance, and I realized that maybe I wasn't fueling enough. I currently weigh 132 pounds to 136 pounds, and that's actually on the heavier side. When I entered into CrossFit, I was about 120 pounds. So I put on 12 to 16 pounds over this journey, and it's been tough to wrap your brain around at times. But knowing that performance versus aesthetic is something completely different. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you guys about today, is you have to look at your goals. What are your goals? That's the first question I want to ask you. So pause this video, take a couple seconds, and are you going to be at the top of the leaderboard every day? Is that your goal? Is your goal to go compete somewhere? Or do you want to look your best and you just want to look good in a bathing suit and have amazing arms or abs or whatever it is? Those are two very different things, and a lot of times you can't have both. So I sit a little bit heavier right now than maybe at my ideal weight or what I would like to sit. However, if I don't fuel, then I suffer in the gym and my performance suffers. So all of the time and energy I spend training is now wasted because I'm not willing to fuel how I should be. So let's talk a little bit about some healthy eating habits. So if your goal is for performance, which I get a lot of messages about on Instagram, is how do I get into competing for CrossFit? We need to make sure you have enough calories. Enough calories is going to help you recover properly, and it's going to help you have the energy to have good sessions. If we have good sessions, we're going to start getting better. We're going to start being able to put more weight on the bar, to push a little bit harder, and to continue reaching that fitness level. What I've learned is wake up and fuel within 30 minutes, especially if I'm going to be heading into a big training session. And when I say fuel, oats, carbs, something along those lines, with some protein and a little bit of fat. I know that a lot of people think, oh, carbs are bad, carbs aren't going to be good for me, or oh, fat's going to make me fat. That is not the case. If you are fueling for your calorie needs, your metabolism is going to burn right through that. So just making sure that you wake up and you have a solid meal. My current meal is about 750 calories with about 90 grams of carbs, give or take 15 grams of fat, and 30+ grams of protein. That holds me over through the morning to get through my first training session. Then we want to make sure that we're putting some protein and some carb after that training session to replenish all of our glycogen stores and start that recovery process for our muscles. So typically a pretty good split would be somewhere around 45 to 50 grams of a quick digesting carbohydrate. So I use Ignition from First Form with some protein. And again, you want a quick digesting protein. You don't want a protein that's going to have a ton of fat in it. So I use the Formula 1 for First Form. That's a nice ratio of that 45 to 50 grams of carbs and that 20 to 25 grams of protein. That will just start the recovery process after your intense session. That way, you are already starting the process, it digests quickly, and then you can get a midday meal in. So whatever that meal looks like for you, typically you want to keep it lighter if you're going to be training again. So for me, that meal could look like white rice, it could look like English muffins or bagels, because that's what I love. But what I have learned is that I can only eat so much broccoli and so many salads and so many sweet potatoes and get the calories and the energy that I need. There is the time and place for the sweet potatoes, for eating those healthier, slower digesting sources of carbohydrates like the broccoli, but there's also the time and place for the faster digesting ones, such as maybe some cereal or English English muffin or whatever it is, granola, that is gonna help you and fuel you during your sessions. So typically I eat all of my faster digesting carbohydrates in the first half of the day. So I wake up, I have some faster digesting carbs in the morning, I have them at lunch, and then immediately after my second session, and then the rest of the night becomes a little bit more protein heavy to fill out the rest of my protein goals, a little bit more fat, some carbs, but maybe a slower digesting carb at this point, and something that doesn't have as much sugar. One big thing I want to touch on is how we've increased food. I didn't start at 440 grams of carbs. I was probably eating around 300, and we bumped up to 350, which was a bigger jump than we usually make. So 350, I was like, wow, there's no way I'm gonna be able to get these 350 grams of carbs in. I think I'm gonna gain a ton of weight, all of this stuff, all of those negative thoughts, which really had no place. So I committed to doing it, and what I quickly noticed within 4 or 5 days is my body was burning right through it. I already noticed increased energy in the sessions, and I noticed better sleep. So that better sleep also led to better sessions. From there, I was hungry. At night, my stomach was growling. I felt like I'd get in bed and I couldn't sleep, and all I was doing was thinking about food. That was a good sign for me to know I needed a little bit more. So we went from the 350 grams of carbs up to 380. So just a small increase of 30 grams to make sure that my body was ready for that. I stayed at 380 for a while. Again, things started to happen about 2 weeks later. I'm laying in bed at night and I'm realizing like all I'm thinking about is eating a giant pizza or going downstairs and eating some cereal. And I'm starting to notice like, wow, I'm really hungry, and my sleep, I was starting to wake up more often during the night. For me, that was a tell. I was like, okay, maybe we need to increase again. So we went from 380 to about 405 grams of carbs. From there, I started to notice my body was starting to look leaner and starting to lean out with all of these calories that didn't make any sense to me. But my metabolism was really cranking with all of those short increases and the time that we had spent doing that. So from there, we increased again up to that 435 to 440 grams of carbs. And what I can tell you with increasing my carbohydrate intake is my mood is so much more stable, my sleep is so much better, my energy is higher for training, I'm able to sustain more intense sessions and recover into the next day, so I just don't feel totally beat down and my body is less achy. Yes, my muscles are more full, maybe I look a little bit thicker, but in the end, it comes down to what I talked about in the beginning. What are your goals? My goal is performance. The reason I wanted to share this information with you is because I especially want the younger females that are coming up in the sport to know how important it is to not undereat. Undereating and overtraining can have some really big impacts on your hormonal balance. And I just want to help you understand that fueling for performance and fueling for your goals is a very healthy thing. If we undereat, then we might start to notice our cortisol might get a little bit off. We might start to notice some imbalances in our hormone functions, and we might not feel all that great, and we might have that moodiness or that irritability or that lack that good quality sleep. So if you are getting into the sport, I think the biggest thing is just to evaluate how much are you eating a day and how are you feeling, and start there, because nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all approach, but undereating and overtraining can lead to injuries down the road and just lead to you feeling all around crappy. And just remember, like I said at the start, nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all, and it's also a long process. It's not a 30-day quick fix. It's a constant trial and error to figure out like, okay, we upped my carbs, how am I feeling? Or maybe your body's not burning through them, so maybe we needed to up the protein or the fat. I was eating really low fat for a while, and I felt like I just was constantly forgetting things and just very, very forgetful. And so once we started to increase that fat, I was feeling more satiated, I was feeling fuller longer, and I was able to start to look at food as fuel for performance and less about it as emotional. So when I say emotional, I was feeling less like, oh, I'm having a bad day, I need to go grab something out of the pantry. It was more of like, okay, it's time to eat. I need this balance of carbs, protein, fat. Okay, I ate that. I'm gonna feel really good during my session. Okay, what's next? So taking that emotional component out of eating. It's taken me a long time to get to this stage. However, I still have a lot of work to do, but I just wanted to share this with you guys because I think it's super important that we talk about eating enough to sustain whatever training that you're doing. And you have to be realistic. If you're only training an hour a day, you're not gonna need 440 grams of carbs. It just depends on what your lifestyle is. So trial and error is a good way to go, and just make sure that you give yourself enough time before you're constantly making adjustments, and only make adjustments to small pieces. Don't up your protein 20 plus grams, up your carbs 50 plus grams. You're not gonna know what makes you feel better or feel worse. I hope you guys found some value in this. I just wanted to take a brief second to talk about nutrition. If there's any other topics that you guys are interested in, or if you wanna see a full day of eating and what it looks like for me to get in 440 grams of carbs, about 150 grams of protein, and 75 to 78 grams of fat, we'd love to show you guys that as well. So make sure to drop your comments below, smash the like button, and again, remember, nutrition is not a one-size-fits-all approach.